Hey guys, Sithu here. Today I'll be showing you how I go about writing and tracking a song. At least the very basics of it. The focus of this video will be just how I go about writing and tracking things. I will just use bias amp instead of my Axe effects. However, the thought process is the same regardless of what I use, so what I talk about today is applicable to how I'd work with any other piece of gear. Right, so let's get to it. So like I said, I'm using bias amp 2, which I have up on screen now. And as you can see, there's an instance of bias amp and bias effects, and it sounds a bit like this. So this is the bias amp tone that I have up on the tone cloud, so you can download this. Also, for the record, I'm using bias effects professional edition and bias amp 2, whatever the highest one is called. Bias amp 2. This is great. They asked me to do a video and I don't even know what the software is called. Standard bias amp 2 Elite is what it's called. That's what I'm using. So yeah, bias effects professional and bias amp 2. So as you can see, I'm using a signal chain of bias effects and bias amp 2. So in my bias amp 2 video, I mentioned how you treat it like you would an actual amp. So you get your bass amp tone, and then you run a drive pedal in front. So what I'm using bias effects for here is to run a gate, a compressor, and a drive pedal in front, just to tighten up the tone. So if I turn off bias effects here, this is how it sounds. Still sounds pretty good. Obviously, for the modern metal tone that I use, it's more preferable to have a tighter, more aggressive tone. So this is where the drive pedal comes in, and noise gate and compressor just to even out the signal and make sure you don't get a lot of string noise and flub coming through. So if I turn on bias effects here, you should hear the tone tighten up considerably. So yeah, that sounds pretty good, and that's the thought process I have regardless of what I use. So if I'm using an amp sim, so in this case it would be bias amp 2, I would drive it with a drive pedal or like some kind of drive pedal plugin or emulation, which is exactly what I'm doing here. I should probably show you what I'm actually got the settings on. So normally for drive pedals, I keep the actual gain on the pedal really low. I always turn the tone up to max because I want it to be as tight and aggressive as possible, and the level's kind of arbitrary. Compressor settings, I'm not even sure what these do. I just picked some things at random, and then noise gate levels, just whatever works, so I can get this like a super tight sort of sound. So that's what I would use for rhythm. So I can actually show you as well what I would use for lead. So if I switch this to bias lead, so it's exactly the same. Just running. Gotta wait for all of these to load. Great advertisement for the software here. So same thing in front, drive pedal, compressor, noise gate. This is the same amp. What I would normally do for a lead tone, and I'm just gonna do this right now, is push up the gain a little bit. I'm shameless with my lead patches. I use as much gain as I think I can get away with. Boost the mid-range a bit, cut the treble and the presence a bit. So that usually gives like a more more rounded tone that sounds better for the singing leads and for lots of alternate picking. Instant coffee because I need to clean my coffee machine today. And then I'm running another instance of bias effects using their delay patch and a spring reverb. I really like the sound of spring reverbs, which is why I'm using that. So that's what I've got in the chain, so that sounds a little something like this. Nice. That last bit of noise where I caught the other string gets repeated in the delay. Delay's great. Your mistakes just get repeated over and over again. So that's what I'm doing for my lead patch. Again, the thought process is the same. Like I treat everything equally in terms of how I go about processing it. So like I said, more gain, a bit more mid-range, a bit less high-end, delay and reverb at the end. The approach doesn't change for what I'm using. And I don't normally sort of treat amp sims as if, you know, I don't normally think I have to make it sound like a real world amp. I just go for whatever I think sounds good. I have a pretty good idea in my head of what I like, so that's what I use. Since I edited this, let's save this bias lead. Anyway, yeah, so I'm gonna start showing you how I go about tracking something that I've written. Let's change this back to the rhythm patch. Waiting for it to load. Showing you all the long loading times. At least the sound comes through. So I've got like a little riff that I came up with. So I'm gonna show you how I go about tracking that and the whole process behind it, as well as showing you how often it takes me to actually nail something. So the riff goes a bit like this. It doesn't go like that. It goes like this. So I want to record that. How I have this set up is I have one track for recording or tracking. I have a template for the guitars and bass with the sort of usual plugins that I have running on them. So that's what I've got going. And then I've got a drum track with my usual Superior drummer set up. So let's hide that for the moment. So you can see I've got a kick drum track, a kick drum channel. So that's all the kick drum mics in Superior Drummer 2, going out into these plugins. Then I have a snare drum track taking all the snare drum mics into one external channel with all these plugins on it. I'm actually using Guitar Rig 5 as a reverb. I still use Guitar Rig 5 as a reverb even though I'm using things like bias and the axe effects. I've got this for hi-hats, this for toms, so I route all the toms into the same channel because I'm lazy. I feel like I've already put enough effort in. This channel is the overheads channel and this channel is the rim channel, and then that runs into a drum bus track where all the drums get hit by an equalizer, cutting out some of that ugly 4K, compressor, and a limiter. Limiter just to shave off the top of the transients is not actually doing anything to the majority of the drum signal. So yeah, that's how I have my sort of template folder set up. So when I start a new project or song, I open up this template with all my drums set up the way I want it, with some sort of basic tracks in there, and I just track off of that. So first things first, let's figure out what tempo we're working at. So I want it to be a bit faster, maybe like 140. A bit faster. 150 maybe. Let's go 148. Actually faster than that. Let's go 155. So I actually want to be a bit faster than that. Let's go 158. That's the tempo I want, so what I normally do is just fire up a drum track and get everything edited up. Even though the click track's on, I have a habit of just putting in the countdown, so 127 velocity because who needs dynamics? Copy paste that. And then I would actually program in a basic drum track. So for this kind of riff, you just want a and then we want this to be like half time, so two cymbals to start off, and then let's put on the hi-hat. Yeah, so I just start with that, something basic, and just copy paste it. So that's 4 repeats of the riff, so then I just go and practice and see how it sounds. So you can hear that 4th repeat isn't quite right, so I'm just going to fix it so when I track it, I'm getting, you know, the kick drum exactly what I wanted. So a lot of people find drum programming really tedious. I don't mind it. You just get used to it, really. So if I practice that. And actually play it right this time. And I actually got that kick drum wrong. Cool, so that's the riff. So just to check one more time. Cool, so that's like the basics of how it gets started in terms of tracking. I would have the riff, figure out the tempo, and then write some basic drums that go along with it. I have mentioned that this is my process for doing this, but it's I've never actually explicitly highlighted it like this. So now I'm like, okay, cool, I'm actually at a point where I can track. First things first, make sure my guitar is in tune. That tuner is not great. Well, it's usable. And 440 Hz because I'm an evil internationalist. I always tune a lot while I'm tracking. Generally, you know, after a bunch of different takes, I would go back and tune my guitars just because I want everything to... Because you can really hear if the tuning starts wavering while you're tracking, so I want to make sure that it all stays consistent. And then I would go about tracking, so prepare for a couple of minutes of me messing up some takes. So that's one take that I messed up. So another take I messed up. As you can see, I'm super fussy when I record. Like, if I hear a messed up slide, string noise that I don't want, open strings that I don't want, I just stop and do it again. So that works. I wanted to do a pinch harmonic at the end there, so let's just fix that in the mix. And I'm totally not ashamed to admit that I do this because all is fair in love and recording. So I moved this down to the rhythm tracks. So because I've got a beefy PC, I'm totally okay with just opening up as many instances of bias as needed. So that comp doesn't quite sound right, so let's just move it over there. Cool, and then that's the left rhythm track, and you just rinse and repeat for the right one. Same deal there, I messed up that pinch harmonic, so let's fix that in the mix. Didn't quite get that. Didn't quite get that as well. As you can see, I'm absolutely shameless. I don't care that I didn't get the take. Oh, I actually want to comp that there. Move that over, and then open up another instance of bias here because this is just a DI. Yeah, that's the tone we want in our recordings. And yeah, that's how I go about tracking it. So I'm incredibly lazy, so let's just copy paste these tracks and have another repeat because why not? So for the second repeat, it's like I usually think about, you know, what layers I want to do. So for this track, I'm thinking, I don't know, like octave. That's not in key. So let's see how that sounds. Why is that soloed? Cool. I want to track that, so let's just duplicate these tracks. Pretty useful in most DAWs, most DAWs. When you duplicate the track, it'll come out with all the plugins you need. So I'm also looking at this mixer window that I have on my other monitor. So just bringing down the layers in volume a little bit for the mix. So I am mixing as I go along. So somehow that's pretty easy to track. You can get that done pretty fast. And just have to do that again. Cool. Let's not do that. Another thing, hotkeys. I'm pretty sure anybody who's worked with a DAW anybody who's worked with a DAW knows, but get to grips with your hotkeys because you'll be using them a lot. So yeah, like I said, I'm using bias here, and I have an instance of bias for every single track. This is only recommended if you have a particularly good PC. What I would say, if you're using something like bias and you don't have a particularly good PC, or if you're recording on a laptop, I would bounce every single instance. So when you finish on a recording track like this, you would bounce the audio out to a different track. And make sure you do any editing you do before you bounce it. It's a lot harder to edit stuff in post. So yeah, that's like the main riff. So then I'd say I want to record like a chorus type thing. Let's see about doing that. So, you know, and then I'd just sit here with my guitar and think, you know, I usually like these kind of progressions for a chorus. Something like that would work, so. Maybe not that chord. Yeah, let's keep it simple. Cool, I have no idea what I'm going to play here, but let's just program some drums, so. So we're always on the upbeat there, so let's just get rid of... Sorry, I got thrown off because I wanted to get rid of that while playing. Again, I get thrown off by the hits not being where they should be. Is that right? Yeah, okay. And then so I just, you know, copy paste that. And then I sort of practice it until I get to the point where it's good to track. So that last bar has to change. So cool. And then, you know, let's just copy paste the drum parts. Let's try and record that rhythm part. Apparently I'm in Dorian now. That's not even the right starting chord. That was almost it. Do I want to comp this? Let's see how that sounds if I comp that. Normally I wouldn't comp this, but I'm being exceptionally lazy today. No. There we go. Let's actually comp it so it doesn't sound like it's obviously two different takes. Can I get away with that? The great thing about comping is that most of the time people can't even tell if it's in the context of a mix. So, you know, do what you want to get everything sounding the way you want it to. For me, I do a lot of comping just to get my tracks out as efficiently as possible, but still sounding good. And it begins again. There we go. Sometimes, very rarely, I will get a near perfect take. So let's see how that sounds. Not bad. bring them up a bit. And then I can also check whether the drum part I programmed was right. It didn't bother me enough to change it while I was tracking. But let's just see. So I guess we can add layers on top. Let's just do the same octave thing. Since we're starting on this chord, I guess we go. Maybe start on the A. Yeah, let's that'll do. Same again, copy paste, you know the deal. Let's record the second part now. Oh, it wasn't quite the same. I get really annoyed when I hear things that aren't quite the same as what I tracked before, so obviously it means I have to delete everything and start again. No, don't delete the actual recording. Whatever. And then just to complete everything, let's track a lead. Just for tracking, I'm going to switch to the lead patch. Let's show you the amazing loading times again. It's weird, like the UI is taking ages to show up, but you can still hear everything. I guess hearing everything is the most important thing. So yeah, let's track this lead line then. I have no idea what I'm going to play. I'm probably just going to improvise something and see how it sounds. And let's just record and see what happens. And I didn't like any of that, so I'm just gonna try again. And as you can see, even though I'm scrapping all of these takes, I'm sort of building up an idea of how I want the lead line to sound. So I've got that beginning part that I'm just gonna keep and then just build it up from there. I sometimes use these, you know, Groove Gear fret wraps. I'm just not gonna use them just now because I'm being exceptionally lazy. That might work. New track, lead. Let's fire on bias FX. I forgot to actually turn on the lead patch there, that was the rhythm patch. So it's actually super rare that I would ever get a lead line in one take like that. I would usually have multiple takes and there would be a lot of comping going on. I like the sound of that. Let's just do one more just to see if we can get something better. Yeah, that doesn't quite work. You see, this is how I feel when I'm not totally happy with what I've gotten because I want to do something else and I'm not like set on what I've already recorded. So let's try again. Oh man, it was going so well. That was going so well to the end. Let's try comp it from there. Almost there. That might do. I actually can't remember what the comp point was. Does that work? Whatever. So for leads like that, this is a really short time. I can spend over an hour or two. Honestly, I can spend a couple of hours just trying to get a lead line right. So this is a very accelerated process. Like, this is good enough for the purposes of demonstrating this. So yeah, that's how I normally would go about recording guitars. I'm actually going to go in and do some bass. I don't have a bass patch set up within either Bias FX or Bias Amp. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just quickly record that with my XFX and then do the final touch to the drums, because the drums are just a repeated loop as opposed to, you know, properly programmed drums. So let's go and do that then. Don't mean to do that. I'm just going to keep it dead simple for the bass, just follow the root note. I play with a pick. The bias stuff's still on, that's why. Yeah, just keep it that simple. I should be able to just do it all in a couple of takes. I wanted to follow the riff for the last repeat there. Let's mute the lead track. So that'll do for bass. That's another really important thing. Make sure the bass always follows the kick drum. Cool. And then the last step is to put my bass away and to finish up editing the drums. So just want to get rid of the intro here. So yeah, that's me editing drums done. And let me just add the last hit in here. And that's how I go about editing drums in time lapse. Anyway, so that's how I go about tracking, writing, and recording something sort of at a very basic level. And I've done all the guitars here with Bias FX, with Bias FX running in front of Bias Amp. Man, I want to show you this stuff, but it's just taking forever to load. Here we go, yeah. So for the guitar tones, I'm just using noise gate into a compressor, into a dry pedal, no, I don't want to sign into my Bias Amp patch. This is actually just the Bias FX patch I have up on Tone Cloud, but with the amp and the EQs turned off. So yeah, same principle for whatever I'm using for guitar, just, you know, for this video I'm using Bias FX. But same principle, you know, dry pedal into amp, then for the lead tones, less high-end, less high-end, more mid-range, more gain, delay and reverb at the end. But, you know, just the same signal chain, really. It's the same for my XFX tones. The lead patch is just a modified rhythm patch. I don't really go too adventurous with regards to, you know, making crazy out the lead tones. So anyway, that's generally how I go about tracking and writing a song. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time.